Welcome at my office. It's time for something new. New year, new custom painting projects, and also a new section on my YouTube channel. And it's about answering the most common questions about custom painting, especially bike painting. Your questions, and that's the first episode. And in every episode, I will answer 10 of your questions. So if you have one, leave a comment underneath the video. And in 1 or 2 months, I will do the next episode and maybe I will answer your question as well. So let's dive right into it. And the first question comes from Anthony. He likes to paint bikes as well, especially carbon bikes. And he asks, how does one spray clear into the tight spots without runs? And Anthony, I think you mean paint runs. And yes, that's a big problem for beginners. Orange peel and paint runs and a good clear coat, because the clear coat is the most hardest thing when it comes to custom painting. And Anthony means these areas underneath the seat stays and also inside the chain stays, because they are very hard to paint, they are hard to reach, and most of the newbies have orange peel in these areas or runs because they apply much too much clear coat. And the simple recommendation I can give you, practice. It's all about the practice. You have to paint 10, 20, 50, 100 frames, and when you have practice, you know how the clear coat reacts and you know how to do it. And I have videos for you, one about clear coating frames. You can find it here in the corner. And I give you some tips about spray paint clear coat and how to apply the clear coat. You can see me spraying clear coat. You can see my flow, how I spray the frames. And if you imitate this flow, you will have no problems with runs. You need also a perfect setup of the spray gun. I have also spray gun setup videos. And if you spray with spray cans, I have also some tips for you in my spray can videos. You need the right temperature, you need the right flow of the spray can or the spray gun, whatever you use. And you need practice, Anthony. That's what I can recommend to you. And these are my tips to avoid any runs and any orange peel on the bike frames. Next question comes from Hercules, and Hercules asks, do you know how to achieve this effect or how to do this effect? He sends me a picture of a helmet, and the helmet has a crackle effect. Let's check it out. That's the helmet Hercules sent me. And yeah, that's very simple. The only thing you need is a crackle color, and I recommend the Montana Crackle. You can see it here, crackle effect. He sent me a white helmet, and Montana provides also a white crackle, pure white. That's the color, and I will link it underneath the video in the description if you want to order it yourself and if you want to do the crackle effect. It's also available in black and I think blue or something like that. And I've done also a video how I use this crackle effect on the plate and on the bike behind me. I will show you the bike with the crackle. Maybe you remember the bike, the monster bike, and yeah, you can see the crackle here. That's the same effect like on the helmet. And I like to give you also some quick tips how to achieve this. You have to start with a primer. I recommend 2-component primers like the SPRAYMAX primers. That's a clear coat, but the primer looks the same. Find it underneath in the video description. So primer first, and if you want to achieve a white helmet, you need a black base color. And I recommend, if you want to use spray cans, the Montana Gold black, and the color is shock black. I will use shock black if I do it, and the white crackle. And when you apply this, you need also a clear coat. I have no clear coat here, but I recommend also these 2K clear coats from SPRAYMAX. Same can like these. I will link all the stuff underneath in the video description. If you want to order it yourself, you can use every clear coat you have. You can use also a different primer. That's a 1-component primer I use also if you use 1-component stuff. But I recommend 2-component primers, the Montana Black, the Montana Crackle effect, and a 2-component clear coat, because you need minimum 2 layers of clear coat with a sanding in between to achieve an absolutely smooth surface like on the helmet behind me. Check this. These are also 2 layers of clear coat, of matte clear coat, and the finish is absolutely even. I did a sanding in between and applied 2 layers of the clear coat. And if you have a crackle effect, there will be gaps in the crackle, so you have to do a sanding. And that's the reason why I recommend 2-component stuff. Next question. Daniel asked, can I ask a quick question? Okay, Daniel, you have asked and I try to answer. I'm about to start a DIY respray, and was just wondering if it's okay to spray with rattle cans in cold weather. No, that's absolutely not okay, Daniel. That's a no-go. You can't spray in cold weather with these spray cans. They need a special temperature, because if it's too cold, you have a lot of paint runs like Anthony, or you have red stuff like orange peel or something like that. So what I recommend, heat these spray guns in the water bath. I will show it in a different video. You can heat the spray guns. Never use fire or something like that. They can explode. So use a water bath or put it in your living room or something like that for some hours. So I recommend minimum 20 degrees Celsius. I don't know what's in Fahrenheit, so 20 degrees Celsius. Ask Google what's that in Fahrenheit. And don't spray in cold weather. Spray inside, and you need a temperature of minimum 20 degrees Celsius if you want to achieve a high quality finish. That's what I recommend. Okay? Next question. Michael asked, hi bro. Okay. I'm your fan, that's good, Michael, and just wondering which is better to remove the paint, using paint removal or using a sandpaper. And I answered this question very often, and what I can tell you is never use paint remover on carbon frames, because it can harm the resin and it can destroy the resin, and that causes a delamination of the carbon fibers. If you have a steel frame or an aluminum frame, you can use paint remover, of course, that's possible. I recommend sandpaper because paint remover pollutes the environment. That's a bad chemical, and I don't like bad chemicals. I use a lot of them, so it's not a good idea to use much more of these chemicals. So I do a lot of sanding, and maybe you have seen my sandblasting cabinet. I don't use sand, I use cherry pits, and I can remove the colors of carbon frames, also of aluminum frames and steel frames as well. But that's very expensive. So if you want to blast a frame, maybe you ask an expert in your area. That's a good decision if you want to save time. And if you want to do it yourself, you can use the paint stripper on aluminum or steel, never on carbon. If you want to strip carbon frames, use sandpaper. Okay, that's my answer. Good luck. Victor asks, oh, that's a long question, so I will skip this. He's planning to paint the bike as well, and he has the question, what can of stickers are you using? It must be strong so that you can using sandpaper on top of them. Yes, you have seen me sanding over these masks I use, and find also some of the masking tape I recommend in the video description, some of the vinyl I use for this stuff. I did a video about the combination of flat black and gloss black. You have seen it here. These are the tubes in the video, and I used a special vinyl. You can find the vinyl in the video description. And if you want to check out how to do these effects, flat black or matte black and gloss, check the video about my tips about matte black and gloss black finishes on bike frames. There are also a lot of tips and the stuff I use. So if you want to buy the vinyl I use, find it underneath in the video descriptions. Good luck, Victor. Pete asks, hi Martin, your videos are fantastic. Thanks, Pete. I'm doing a bike build with my son. That's good. He's 9 years, okay. And Pete asked, could I just ask which primer for bare aluminum frame for Montana top coat? I plan for 2K clear coat, which finish? That's a bit difficult. And what I can recommend is every time a 2K epoxy if you like to paint aluminum. You can use also a 1K, but you have to be an expert because you have to prepare the aluminum. You have to sand the aluminum to remove the first thin layer. It oxidizes with air. So if you have an aluminum frame, I have no aluminum frame here, but it oxidizes and you have to remove the oxidation of the aluminum. So sand the frame or do a sandblasting. In this case, media blasting. Never use sand on aluminum. It's a soft material. So check my sanding videos. Also the sandblast cabinet videos to find the right material for aluminum, or do a hand sanding with sandpaper. And then you can apply also a 1K material. And if you want to go safe and sound, I recommend a 2K material like the SPRAYMAX 2K epoxy primer. That's a clear coat, but it has the same can and the same labeling. Find it underneath in the video description. I will link you some primer I recommend for aluminum. Next question. I painted an old frame about a year ago with Montana. George asked this question. White, and I did 5 coats, 1 coat every 24 hours, and it took around 8 months for the paint to fully harden. Do you know why it took so long and it was so soft that it left fingernail marks when I pressed down on it? Yes, that's the big problem beginners does or do. And the problem is you like to hide your crimes with a lot of paint. If it's not perfect, you do a next layer, a next layer, a next layer, and that's absolutely not recommended. You need a thin layer of paint because there are solvents in the paint, and if the solvents cannot evaporate because the drying is not finished, or how can I say, it needs a special temperature and a special amount of time to evaporate all these solvents in the paint. And if they can't evaporate, and if you apply a next layer over it, you will close the first layer and the solvents are still in the paint even after 8 months, and it's soft like a chewing gum, and that's exactly your problem. So if you use these acrylic colors, apply only a thin layer and let it harden maybe 24 hours at room temperature. And never apply too much layers of color. 5 are much too much. 1 or 2 layers are enough, and they must harden before you can apply a clear coat or a next layer of color. 5 layers are much too much color, and the problem you have are the solvents in the paint which can't evaporate. Okay, George, that's your problem. And if you want to solve it, you have to remove all the color and you have to start from scratch and do a good preparation, a good sanding. That's the key for good quality, as I say every time. And use a 2-component primer. Sand it as good as you can with 800 and 1200 grit. Then apply only a thin layer of color and a clear coat on top, and you are safe. Okay? Next question. Is there any sanding required between coats or clear coat? That's also a common question a lot of people have, and I can say no. If you have a primer, a 2-component primer, you have to sand it, because if you don't sand it, there will be no bond between the primer and the color. If you use a 1-component primer, you can paint direct on the primer, but I recommend the sanding because of a lot of you newbies don't apply an absolutely smooth surface. You have to go wet on wet, and that's not so easy. So if you let your primer cure and if it's dry, you have to do a sanding. Then apply these acrylic colors. They need no sanding. If they are cured more than 24 hours, they need a sanding because the surface is closed and the bond between the colors is not perfect if the surface is closed. But that's difficult to show you. So what I recommend is do thin layers with no sanding, do a clear coat and sand the clear coat, and maybe do a next layer of clear coat. Never sand these colors, okay? Next questions. Thanks for this great video. Alan asked, yeah, Alan, thank you also. And does this procedure also work for steel and aluminum frames? He asked for the DIY video of this frame, the red frame you have seen in my videos. I will link it also if you want to do a DIY painting in the right corner. And the answer is very simple, yes. You can paint carbon frames, you can paint aluminum frames, steel frames or whatever. The only thing which changes are the primers. So what I recommend on steel frames are special steel primers. What I recommend on carbon frames are epoxy primers like the SPRAYPAINT, and you can use them also on aluminum. It's a 2K epoxy. So 2K epoxy on carbon frames, on aluminum frames, and a special edge primer for steel frames. I will link you some in the video description if you want to order the right primer for your project. And if you have applied the primer, you can sand it and then you can use every color you like. Doesn't matter if it's a carbon frame or if it's a steel frame or if it's aluminum frame. It's only about the primers. So find the right primer for the product you like to paint. Steel, aluminum or carbon. Again, for carbon and aluminum frame, 2K epoxy primers, and for a steel frame, a 1K or 2K edge primer. That's what I recommend to you. Next question. Michael asked, I'm thinking about painting a used carbon MTB. Okay, and he asked, can I just rough sand the original finished and to give the can of primer something to stick to? Okay, Yeah, if you are lazy, you can, but you have high risks of fail because the original paint can react with your primers, it can react with your colors, it can bubble like a blow-off in your bathtub, as I say every time. And if you want to save time, not to remove the original color, you have to spend all the time in removing a fail paint job, and that costs much more time. So that's the reason why you see me every time removing the original colors. I have no problems if I start from scratch. If you want to paint on original colors, you have also more weight on the frame, but yeah, these are only some grams, maybe 30 to 50 to 70, so nothing too much of the weight, but it's also a problem if you have any, how can I say, it's a problem on the rivets. I can tell you something about the rivets. You can see here, there's no color on my rivets, I masked them. And on the other frame, I have the rivets painted, like you can see here. And if you paint too much colors on the frame, you have problems with these derailleur guides and something like that, because if there's color inside, there's no, the guides can't slip perfect in these derailleur guides. And that can be a problem if you apply too much color. So it's a good decision to remove the complete color by sandblasting, by media blasting, or with paint stripper if you want, if you have an aluminum or steel frame. And if you are lazy, you have to do tests, maybe on the downside of your frame, on the downside of the down tube, on a small area. And if you have no bubbles, yeah, maybe you can do that, rough sand the original paint, but you have to remove all the decals because they are screen printed. And if you have screen printed decals, they bubble as hell. That's what I found out during the years. So remove all the decals and rough sand the original finish if you like. But there's a high risk of fail. So yeah, that's what I recommend, and that's what I can say about this question. And that's all, 10 questions. And if you have, if you have one, leave a comment underneath the video. And I will do a next episode, maybe in February or March. Good luck with your own paint jobs. Good luck with your DIY paint jobs. Stay tuned, I will launch also this year a lot of interesting paint jobs. Also DIY with spray can if you are a DIYer, and of course professional ones I do for my clients. So see you next week with a new project, and good luck with your colors and your custom painting projects.